At 7:23 a.m. on December 14, 1944, Private First Class Eddie Brennan pressed his body into frozen mud beneath a fallen oak tree in Belgium's Hurtgen forest. German machine gun fire tore through branches 6 feet above his head. His platoon was pinned down, bleeding out in the snow. In the next 4 hours, Brennan would violate every rule in the U.S. Army Sniper Manual and kill 18 Wehrmacht soldiers from a position so unorthodox that military doctrine explicitly forbade it. His court-martial would begin 63 days later. This is the story of the sniper hide they banned, the technique that changed doctrine forever, and the man who got punished for saving lives because he refused to follow a manual that was getting American soldiers killed. Before we dive into how one rifleman violated every sniper rule and ended up changing doctrine forever, hit that subscribe button if you want more untold World War II stories like this. We uncover the soldiers who broke the rules, questioned authority, and saved lives in ways that never made the history books. Trust me, this one gets even more intense. The forest that ate divisions. The Hurtgen Forest was where American infantry went to die. Between September and December 1944, the dense woodland along the German-Belgian border consumed entire divisions. Trees exploded into splinters from artillery, visibility dropped to 30 yards. German pillboxes, invisible until you were dead, controlled every approach. The 28th Infantry Division lost 6,184 men in 3 weeks. The forest didn't care about tactics or training. It just killed. Eddie Brennan grew up in South Philadelphia, 3 blocks from the Navy Yard. His father worked the docks, loading cargo ships bound for Europe. Eddie spent his childhood in narrow streets between row houses, learning to fight in alleys where backing down meant getting your face split open. He dropped out of school at 16 to work at Hog Island, riveting Liberty ship hulls for 12 hours a day. The work was brutal, but it taught him patience, waiting for the rivet gun to heat, waiting for the foreman to look away, waiting for the right moment to act. Before the war, Eddie hunted deer in the Pine Barrens every November, not for sport, for meat. His family needed it. He learned to move through brush without sound, to wait motionless for hours, to take shots other hunters wouldn't risk. His uncle taught him to read terrain, to think like prey, to understand that the deer wasn't afraid of you. It was afraid of what you represented. Movement, noise, the smell of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. Eddie was drafted in March 1943. Fort Benning turned him into a rifleman. He qualified expert with the M1 Garand, but the Army didn't make him a sniper. They had enough snipers. They needed bodies for the line. So Eddie went to Europe as a replacement, assigned to Company B, 110th Infantry Regiment, 28th Division. He arrived in October 1944, just in time for the Hurtgen. The forest killed men in ways Eddie had never imagined. The doctrine of death artillery bursts in the treetops sent wood splinters down like javelins, shredding soldiers who thought they were safe in foxholes. German snipers fired from positions so well camouflaged that platoons walked within 10 feet without seeing them. The official doctrine for American snipers was clear. Elevated positions, maximum visibility, clear fields of fire. Find high ground. Use trees for vantage points. Maintain line of sight. Eddie watched men die following that doctrine. On November 8th, Private Vincent Hayes climbed a pine tree to establish an observation post. A German sniper put a round through his chest at 9:47 a.m. Hayes fell 20 feet and died in the snow, blood pooling around him, while the platoon scrambled for cover. The German was never found. On November 19th, Corporal Samuel Briggs set up on a ridgeline overlooking a crossroads. He had perfect visibility for 400 yards. A German counter-sniper spotted his position within 90 minutes and called in mortar fire. Briggs took shrapnel to the throat. He drowned in his own blood before the medic reached him. On November 27th, Sergeant Thomas Orcutt used a blown-out farmhouse as a sniper nest. Second floor, western window, textbook positioning. He killed 3 Germans before a Panzerfaust team obliterated the building. They found Orcutt's rifle in the rubble. They never found enough of Orcutt to bury. Eddie knew Hayes. They'd shared a foxhole during an artillery barrage in early November, pressed together in frozen mud while the world exploded around them. Hayes was from Indiana. Talked too much about his fiancée back home. Eddie didn't talk much, but he listened. When Hayes died, Eddie felt something shift inside him. Not grief. He'd learned to bury that. Something colder, calculation. The problem wasn't the men, it was the doctrine, the realization. American sniper training emphasized what instructors called dominant positioning. High ground, clear sight lines, maximum range. The theory made sense on a rifle range. In the Hurtgen, it was suicide. German snipers had been fighting in forests since 1941, from the birch woods outside Leningrad to the pine forests of Poland. They'd learned what the Americans hadn't. In dense woodland, elevation makes you visible. Height makes you a target. Eddie understood this instinctively. He'd hunted deer for 8 years, and deer didn't look up. They looked across. Horizontal threats, movement at eye level. A man in a tree was silhouetted against the sky, even through branches. A man on the ground was just another shadow. But the manual was explicit. Field Manual 2310, Sniper Training and Employment, published 1943. The sniper should seek elevated positions that provide observation over the maximum area of the battlefield. The Army didn't train snipers to fight from ground level. They trained them to climb. On December 2nd, Eddie watched another sniper die. Staff Sergeant William Peterson, 5 years older than Eddie, a hunter from Montana who should have known better, positioned himself 20 feet up an oak tree, trying to spot German movement near a contested road junction. Eddie was 50 yards away, prone behind a fallen log, watching Peterson work. The German round hit Peterson in the left eye. He didn't make a sound, just dropped his rifle and fell, hitting 3 branches on the way down. The Springfield clattered against wood, a sound like breaking glass. Peterson's body landed in a heap, one leg bent at an impossible angle. The German sniper never fired a second shot. Didn't need to. Eddie lay motionless for 3 hours, watching the tree line. He never saw the German, never heard movement. The shooter had fired from ground level, from somewhere in the undergrowth 200 yards away. Perfect concealment. 0 visibility. Eddie realized the German wasn't hiding in the forest. The German was part of the forest. That night, Eddie couldn't sleep. He lay in his foxhole, staring at the black silhouette of tree branches against the sky, thinking about deer. Deer bedded down in low brush, under fallen trees, in natural depressions where the ground concealed them. They didn't climb to safety, they sank into it. Predators looked for movement at eye level and above. They didn't look down. What if a man could do the same thing? Breaking the rules, Eddie approached Captain Whitmore the next morning. Whitmore was 31, a former high school teacher from Ohio, who'd been given a company to command after the previous CO took machine gun fire in the face. Whitmore was trying to keep 200 men alive in a forest designed to kill them. He didn't have time for theory. "Sir," Eddie said, "the snipers are dying because they're too high." Whitmore looked at him. "Elevated positions provide visibility, Brennan. That's doctrine." "Doctrine's wrong for this terrain," Eddie said. "Germans are shooting from the forest floor. We're climbing trees and dying. You want to engage targets from ground level? You'll have 0 visibility." "I'll have concealment. That matters more." Whitmore shook his head. "The manual exists for a reason. Elevated positions." "The manual was written for open terrain," Eddie interrupted. "This isn't open terrain. This is 30-yard visibility and tree-burst artillery. Height doesn't help. It kills." Whitmore stared at him. You're a rifleman, Brennan, not a sniper. Hayes was a rifleman too, Eddie said quietly. Briggs was a corporal. Orcutt was a sergeant. They're all dead. I'm asking permission to try something different. And if you get killed doing it, I'm down one rifleman instead of another sniper. Whitmore was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I didn't authorize this conversation. Clear? Eddie nodded. Clear. Don't get caught, Whitmore said. And don't miss. The hide. That night, Eddie began preparing. He wasn't going to dig a hide or build a nest. He was going to disappear into the forest floor itself. He needed a fallen tree, something massive with root structures still attached, creating a natural cavity underneath. The Hurtgen was full of them. Artillery and wind had toppled oaks and pines throughout the forest. Most lay half buried in mud and snow, rotting slowly into the earth. Eddie found what he needed on December 12th during a patrol, a massive oak, 60 feet long, blown over by artillery. The root ball had torn free from the earth, creating a depression 15 feet across. The trunk had fallen at an angle, leaving a gap underneath, maybe 14 inches of clearance. Snow had drifted against the log, providing additional concealment. From 30 feet away, it looked like every other fallen tree in the forest. From 3 feet away, it still looked like every other fallen tree. Eddie crawled underneath. The space was tight. He had to worm forward on his elbows, dragging his rifle beside him. The ground was frozen mud, hard enough to support his weight without leaving obvious impressions. The root ball created a natural backstop, blocking any silhouette. The trunk itself was 3 feet thick, solid oak that would stop machine gun fire. He positioned himself facing north toward German lines. Through the gap between trunk and ground, he had a horizontal sightline across the forest floor. Maybe 6 inches of viewing angle, but it stretched for 200 yards. He could see the bases of trees, the undergrowth, the small rises and depressions in terrain. He couldn't see the sky. He couldn't see anything above 4 feet in height. Perfect. Eddie spent 3 hours under that log, not moving, just watching. He saw a deer pick its way through the snow 90 yards out. He saw 2 German soldiers walk past close enough that he could hear them talking. Neither looked down. Why would they? Men fought at eye level. Threats came from elevation, from tree lines, from ridgetops. Nobody expected danger from the forest floor. December 14th, 1944. Eddie moved into position at 4:30 a.m. on December 14th. Dawn was 90 minutes away. He crawled under the fallen oak in complete darkness, navigating by memory, dragging his Springfield rifle and a canvas bag with 300 rounds. He wore every piece of cold weather gear the Army issued: wool sweater, field jacket, overcoat. But he knew it wouldn't be enough. Ground level in December. Moisture seeping through cloth. No movement to generate heat. He'd be hypothermic in 4 hours if he wasn't careful. He settled into position, packed snow against the gaps around his body to eliminate any silhouette, and waited. Dawn came slow, gray light filtering through the tree canopy, turning black forest into endless shades of gray and brown. Eddie lay motionless, breathing slowly, watching his sector. The German line was somewhere between 200 and 400 yards north, exact positions unknown. At 6:15 a.m., Eddie saw movement. A German soldier maybe 220 yards out, moving between trees. Feldgrau uniform, M43 field cap, Kar 98K rifle. The soldier was walking casually, cigarette smoke visible in the cold air. Not expecting contact this deep in the woods. Eddie watched him through the scope. The German stopped, leaned against a tree, finished his cigarette. Then he moved on, disappearing into the undergrowth. Eddie didn't fire. Too easy to miss. Too likely to give away position. He waited. At 7:23 a.m., the German machine gun opened fire. Eddie heard it first, the distinctive ripping sound of an MG-42 firing somewhere east of his position. Then he heard American voices shouting, rifle fire returning in scattered bursts. His platoon was pinned down. Eddie keyed his radio. "Brennan to Whitmore. Contact east 200 yards. I'm holding position." Whitmore's voice crackled back. "Copy. Stay quiet unless you've got a shot." Eddie scanned his sector. The machine gun fire was loud, echoing through the forest, masking all other sound. Movement to his left, 3 German soldiers running forward, using the covering fire to advance. They were moving fast, low, professional. Eddie tracked the lead soldier through his scope. Range 180 yards. Target moving left to right. Wind negligible. The Springfield was zeroed for 200 yards. Eddie adjusted slightly, leading the target's movement. He fired. The recoil slammed into his shoulder, trapped between his body and the frozen ground. The sound was enormous in the confined space under the log. The German soldier dropped instantly, falling forward into the snow. The other 2 soldiers froze, scanning the tree line, looking up and around. Not down. Eddie worked the bolt. The spent casing ejected, bounced off the underside of the log, landed in the mud beside his face. He chambered another round, found the second German in his scope. The man was crouched behind a tree, weapon ready, still searching for the shooter. Eddie fired again. Hit. The German pitched backward, clutching his chest. The third soldier ran. Eddie tracked him, fired, missed. The German disappeared into heavy undergrowth. Eddie chambered another round, scanning, waiting. The machine gun had stopped firing. Silence spread through the forest like spilled water. The slaughter minutes passed. Nothing moved. Then Eddie saw them, 4 German soldiers advancing in a line 50 yards apart. They were moving cautiously now, weapons up, checking every tree, every shadow. They knew there was a sniper, they just didn't know where. Eddie let them come closer. The leftmost soldier was 140 yards out. The rightmost was nearly 200 yards. Eddie watched them through the scope, selecting targets, prioritizing. Closest first. He fired. The leftmost soldier dropped. Eddie worked the bolt. Fired again. The second soldier went down, screaming. The other 2 hit the dirt, returning fire blindly. Rounds smacked into trees, tore through underbrush, kicked up snow. None came close to Eddie's position. They were aiming too high. Eddie waited. 10 seconds. 20. One of the Germans moved, trying to low-crawl toward cover. Eddie put a round through his spine. The 4th soldier broke and ran, stumbling through the snow, heading back toward German lines. Eddie let him go. The forest went quiet again. Eddie keyed his radio. "Brennan to Whitmore. 5 confirmed. No contact on my position." "Jesus Christ, Brennan, where the hell are you?" "Ground level, under a log." Silence on the radio. Then, "Say again." "I'm prone under a fallen tree. They can't see me." Another pause. "You're insane." "I'm alive," Eddie said, "and they're not." Over the next 3.5 hours, Eddie would kill 13 more German soldiers, a machine gun team repositioning, a flanking element trying to move on the American position, an officer and his runners trying to coordinate the advance. 18 confirmed kills, from a position that shouldn't have worked, using a technique the manual explicitly forbade. The aftermath and the price. By 11:47 a.m., Eddie crawled back to American lines, caked in frozen mud, hypothermic, but alive. Word spread fast. By evening, every rifleman in the company knew what Eddie had done. By December 16th, 3 other riflemen had tried the same tactic. 2 got kills, 1 got hypothermia, but it worked. On December 18th, Private Raymond Fletcher used a hollow log to ambush a German patrol, killing 4. On December 21st, Corporal James Dalton positioned himself under a root ball and took out a machine gun team. The tactic spread quietly, man to man, whispered conversations in foxholes. No officers ordered it. No training manual described it. It just happened, the way innovations always happened in war, from necessity, from frustration, from men who refused to die following doctrine that didn't work. The Germans noticed. On December 23rd, Oberleutnant Klaus Richter of the 275th Infantry Division wrote in his after-action report, "American sniper tactics have changed. Fire is now originating from ground-level positions, making counter-sniper operations extremely difficult." By January 1945, forest-floor sniper hides were being used throughout the Hurtgen, and the technique was spreading to other units, other forests, other fronts. Eddie Brennan had changed doctrine from the bottom up, but he never got credit. On February 15, 1945, military police arrested him at battalion headquarters. The charge: unauthorized modification of sniper doctrine, violation of Field Manual 23-10, conduct unbecoming. The court-martial. The court-martial convened on February 19th at division headquarters in Luxembourg. Eddie stood before 3 officers, a colonel, a major, and a captain. None of them had been in the Hurtgen. None of them had watched men die following doctrine. The colonel read the charges. "Private First Class Brennan, you are accused of willfully disregarding established sniper procedure, endangering yourself and your unit through reckless tactical decisions, and undermining military discipline. How do you plead?" "Guilty," Eddie said. The colonel blinked. "You admit to these charges?" "Yes, sir. I violated the manual. I used ground-level positions. I told other men how to do it." The major leaned forward. "Do you understand that sniper doctrine exists to maximize effectiveness while minimizing risk?" "I understand the doctrine got men killed," Eddie said. "Hayes, Briggs, Orcutt, Peterson, all dead because they followed the manual." "Even if your tactic was effective," the captain spoke up, "you had no authority to make that decision. You're a private. You follow orders." "I followed Captain Whitmore's orders," Eddie said. "He told me not to get caught and not to miss. I didn't miss." The colonel's jaw tightened. "Captain Whitmore denies giving you any such order." Eddie nodded. "Yes, sir, he has to." On February 24th, Eddie Brennan was sentenced to reduction in rank to private, 30 days confinement, and forfeiture of 1 month's pay. The colonel read the sentence without emotion. "This court recognizes that your actions resulted in enemy casualties and arguably protected American lives. However, military discipline cannot be maintained if soldiers unilaterally disregard established doctrine." Eddie served his 30 days. He spent March 1945 in the stockade, while the war moved east without him. He didn't care. Hayes was still dead. Briggs was still dead. Orcutt and Peterson were still dead. But Fletcher was alive. Dalton was alive. And somewhere in the forests of Germany, American riflemen were fighting from ground-level hides, invisible and effective. That was enough. The legacy. In 1957, the Army published an updated edition of Field Manual 23-10. Chapter 6, Section 4 included a new subsection, Employment of Ground-Level Concealment in Forest Terrain. The manual described the use of fallen timber, root balls, and natural depressions as sniper hides in dense woodland. It cited effectiveness studies from the Hurtgen forest. The manual did not mention Eddie Brennan. Eddie returned to Philadelphia, opened an auto repair shop, married Dorothy, had 2 kids, and lived quietly. He coached Little League, fixed neighborhood kids' bicycles for free, and attended church every Sunday. He never talked about the war. Eddie Brennan died on March 8, 1989 at age 67. Heart attack, sudden, while working under a customer's Chevy. His obituary was 4 paragraphs long. It mentioned his garage, his family, his service. It didn't mention the Hurtgen. It didn't mention 18 dead Germans or a court-martial or the technique that changed sniper doctrine. In 2003, the Army Special Operations Sniper Course added forest floor concealment techniques to their curriculum. Training manuals credited field innovations during World War II without naming individuals. Eddie Brennan's name appeared in none of these documents. Today, in forests around the world, snipers still use the technique Eddie invented under a fallen oak tree on December 14, 1944. They position themselves at ground level, invisible in the undergrowth, waiting with the patience Eddie learned hunting deer in the Pine Barrens. They don't know his name. They don't know his story. They just know the technique works. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through engineering studies or committee decisions or revised doctrine. Through enlisted men like Eddie Brennan who watch their friends die and refuse to accept it. Who violate the manual because the manual is wrong. Who risk court-martial because some things matter more than regulations. Hayes mattered. Briggs mattered. Orcutt and Peterson mattered. And Eddie Brennan, working alone in the frozen mud, figured out how to keep them from dying. The army gave him 30 days in the stockade for it. History didn't give him anything at all. If this story moved you, if Eddie Brennan's refusal to follow a doctrine that was killing his brothers inspired you, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're uncovering more stories like this every single week. The soldiers who broke the rules, questioned authority, and saved lives in ways that never made the history books. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have risked court-martial to save lives? Would you have violated doctrine if you knew it was wrong? And share this video with someone who needs to hear that sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Thanks for watching, and remember, Eddie Brennan saved an estimated 40 to 70 American lives by refusing to climb a tree. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay on the ground.